everybody. Welcome everybody who got up early. I hope you had a great time last night. Not too great apparently since you made it to 9 o'clock meeting. Anyway, my name is Jeff. I'm a patent lawyer. First an engineer. I actually worked in display technologies right before I decided to go to law school. Back in the 90s, if you guys remember, the older guys, people probably remember the laptop computers were grayscale. And then at some point they transitioned to color. Well, I worked on the color technologies. Actually made those red, green, and blue pigments that went into the earliest LCD color computers. And anyway, that was many years ago, and here I am 20 plus years later. I've been working as a patent lawyer, and I work with all kinds of tech companies and startups. So I thought, given the opportunity, how about we do a global overview of what's going on in the world in patents in XR technology. So let's get started. All right, so first thing we do a search. How many different patent families are there? Going back to since about 2012, thereabouts. I mean, you could always find all kinds of little things early on, but 2012 is when we start to see a real ramp up, real high growth in the patent estate. And these are patent families. So this would be like the basic invention that's filed, say, in the United States. And then there could be, international filings, Europe and Japan and Korea and China. And all that together is one family. So and typically there could be up to 10 countries per patent. So there's really on the order of 50, 60, 70,000 patents out there when you include all the individual countries. And how do they break down? Well, if you look at the way that the patent offices classify technology, they actually do. When you submit your patent application, they characterize it, and they figure out which patent examiner, who is an engineer or a scientist who has a particular experience, should be reviewing the patent application. And so what we're seeing here is these are the top 10 tech categories. And we're looking at, if you look at these, generally, you can see, well, about a third of them have to do with software and data manipulation. About a third of them have to do with image recognition and computer vision and image analysis. And about another third is hardware, things like the hologram imaging, optical systems, and everything that it takes to make these things, all the hardware and the optics. And then the question is, well, who owns all these patents? And so we look at, it's to no surprise, we can take a look at the top two, seem to be battling it out in terms of who owns the most patents. Microsoft at 333 and Magic Leap at 322. And again, this data was generated about 10 days ago, so those numbers probably have changed in the last 10 days. Not too much, though, since this goes all the way back to the 2012. And then you can see the companies afterwards. And in fact, you can see everybody else afterwards, Facebook, Google, IBM, Sony, all the big ones. Everybody who we expect is on this list. All right, so in terms of what I think are the coolest, in terms of what we've seen in the patent literature, I break it down to 5 basic topics. First is haptics and controllers. Then we have volumetric and neural rendering, basically converting the software that it takes, the programs, all the math necessary to take a 2D image and convert it into a 3D object digitally. The optical waveguides, an extremely important element to all of this, clearly. The first thing we have to do is we have to see what's in front of us before we can see it, smell it, taste it, and experience it in many different ways. Wearable technologies, all this clearly is going to be very important in terms of creating a lightweight, wearable, head-mounted display, face-mounted display, or whatever, hand-mounted glove, bodysuit, etc. And then the fifth really important topic, which I only learned about recently from a client of mine, is that sometimes you want to be able to spend a lot of time with an XR device on your face and looking at things close up. And the problem is that a lot of the displays technology today does not achieve that very well. It makes you feel sick, you can't focus right, and so I understand that the light field and holographic displays are really important and really critical, and there's been a lot of patent activity in that. We'll talk a little bit about that at the end. And before I do end, I would like to leave some time at the end for any Q&A, because I'm sure people always have questions for the patent lawyer, and I will be available afterwards outside if anybody has any questions further to get into anything in more detail. So let's start. Haptics. All right, so we have, clearly we all know what haptics are, from the touch, the feel, sensing, beyond just seeing, okay? So in terms of a cool haptics technology, one happens to be from Haptics. I actually personally visited Haptics back in about 4 years ago. I think they were back at in San Luis Obispo back then, and very cool technology. I actually tried on the glove, tried on the headset. The heat and the tingling, that whole sensation, super cool, right? And I thought, yeah, absolutely. Going back, taking a look at the patents, lots and lots of patents in haptics, right? In haptics field, and then haptics itself. So just real quickly, I just want to show you this is 26 pages from a patent. If you've never seen a patent before, basically up on the left-hand corner is the title page. We march along to the right, and you can kind of see there are lots and lots and lots of drawings, technical patent drawings, followed up by text drawings, and at the very end, the most important part, which is the legal right, the legal patent right. The reason why I'm a lawyer and I do this for a living is to create the exclusive patent rights for companies. Now, just to let everybody know, all the companies I'm talking about today, I do not work with as clients. These are companies I know, technologies I know. I'm not talking about my own clients here. So let's drill down. So this is one of the slides from that haptics patent. Okay, the haptic feedback glove. So this is a technical description and a technical drawing. The technical drawing basically shows you what they are claiming. What is on the right, the words on the right, is the claim, the legal claim. And this is just a part of it. The actual words, the total words of that claim defines the legal right. And so it starts off with a human-computer interface system comprising, right? A fingertip assembly configured to apply pressure to the finger, ... At least one of a tactor configured to apply pressure in a radial surface. It gets into all the details. And that claim basically, it's a description of what they own. That description is the first new novel description in the world. And if anybody does exactly that description, they are what? They're infringers. And then Haptics has a reason to go after people, is to prevent others from copying their technology. And that's it in terms of patent 101. Let's get into the technology. That's what you're really here for. Okay, so that's one haptics patent. Okay, and then I get this question all the time. It's like, well, why should we, patents are expensive. Why should what's the value? I'm a startup. We can't afford millions of dollars in patent litigation fees. Why should I bother investing in IP? Why should I bother investing in patents? Well, here's a good reason. Is so that you have the leverage to do deals with companies much bigger than yourself. So back in 2019, Sony teams with Immersion Corp to use their advanced haptics portfolio, that is patent portfolio and other technologies in VR controllers. So Immersion was able to leverage their patent portfolio. That's one of the key points why companies get IP, is to get leverage. They're not looking to sue everybody and look like jerks. They just want leverage in business negotiations. That's why we get patents. And here's an example of some Immersion patents. So what we saw earlier with the haptics patent, which was very mechanical, the glove, and how the glove operates. A lot of the Immersion patents are more about code and software and how to do things, the methodologies. So you could patent devices, you can patent components, and you could also patent the computer software, the new methods for doing things. So in this case, on the left is from one patent called Systems and Methods for Haptic Remote Control Gaming. It's a very simple 4-step methodology. The claim is a little bit more complicated. If anybody's interested in the claim, I could show you afterwards outside. I don't want to get into a whole claim analysis. That is long and boring, generally, for people who are not patent lawyers. And then the one on the right is another patent, haptic-enabled wearable devices for generating a haptic effect. And you can see it's just basically, this is just code, methodologies. Again, claims are a little bit more detailed, but this is the basic of what a lot of the patents were like this. Okay, and they actually also did have some device patents. Here's one, which was filed early on. So 2013 was pretty early for filing patents in wearable XR technologies. And this patent actually was, I guess, highly rated. When people do data analytics on patent portfolios and patent estates, oftentimes the, quote, powerful patents are the ones that were filed early on, and then a lot of subsequent follow-on technology companies cited back. And so this patent appears in other people's patents, and so it's deemed a very powerful patent because it was early technology. And if I look at the claim on the right, this claim is the full claim, which, you know, as claims go, is actually pretty broad. And we could talk more about claim analysis later, but this is kind of a very general, broad claim, and perhaps one of the reasons why Sony was very interested. Again, wearable device configured to provide haptic feedback comprising the following things: a processor, a first haptic output device, a second, etc. Okay? Moving on. Hot topic number 2, neural rendering. Okay, how do you generate 3D objects from 2D images? Okay, right? Our cameras, they only see 2D images. So we input the images on, we do some kind of mathematical algorithm, for example, optimized neural radiance field technology, and from there you pop out basically the render view of what the 3D object must look like. I mean, how do we, people, look at objects? You know, you look at it from maybe a couple of different views, and then voila, you could probably reproduce the 3D object. That's a really hard thing for a computer to do, and having XR tech to do that is really an important thing to be able to do efficiently. It takes a lot of compute power to do this, folks, as some of you know. And as it turns out, some of the big companies are actually working on neural radiance fields, as we could see in the patent portfolio. So this is a Microsoft patent, computing images of dynamic scenes. That number below is the application number, not yet a patent, US 2021. That's when it published, so they filed this around 2019. So a relatively new patent. This is something that perhaps Microsoft is interested in. And it's a pretty, very, I would say, basic looking drawing, but there's right in the middle where it says volume renderer, that's where all the exciting stuff is. And again, the patent gets into many, many, many details, but for our purposes today, I just want to give you a flavor as to what's happening. Likewise, Google also has a creation and usage of multi-dimensional reality capture. Again, also using neural radiance fields for being able to generate what the 3D object probably looks like given a couple of different views. So here we have these three patent guys standing around an object, each basically taking an image of the object from a different point of view, their point of view, using a different kind of input device, a phone, a pair of glasses, an iPad, etc. Okay, hot topic number 3, wearable display technologies. All right, let's take a look. So before we get into patents on wearability, I've been walking around the expo hall, and I'm thinking, boy, I would love to be able to wear one of these things all day long, just make it part of my life. That would be, one of my goals, is to be able to have that information right there. So I found this picture on the internet. Thank you, Milo. I think Milo is on from one of his blogs to give proper credit. And here he is sitting on the subway, right? He's got his virtual reality headset on. What's everybody else doing, for the most part? Everybody else is down looking at their phones, right? I don't know if someday there'll be a picture, if somebody could take a picture of basically everybody wearing a virtual reality headset. I can imagine people taking a picture of having people all wearing glasses, but I'm not sure about VR. I think some people may feel uncomfortable being closed out on a subway to potential third parties around them. All right, so let's get into the searches on global wearable XR patents. So like before, all technology, 7,000 patents. Now we focused it down to only the wearables. We're seeing about 750 patent families. Okay, and again, no surprise, this is pretty much a subset of what we saw before. Magic Leap and Microsoft are out. Actually, Magic Leap is much further out when it comes to wearable technology compared to Microsoft, about a ratio of 3 to 1. Facebook and Microsoft are pretty much tied, and then you can see the rest down there. And interestingly is, how do these patents, how were they filed over time? I was actually quite surprised. I was expecting when we generated the graph of when were these patents first filed, that they would be, you'd see this, hockey stick or constant acceleration going upwards, but there was actually a peak. So it actually peaked around 2017, where we saw the effect of wearables. So there's a lot of growth, just focusing on the wearability, and then that came down. Now the 2022 data, I mean, obviously that's just partial data, but this is a really interesting graph, and I was really surprised by this. But if anybody has any ideas, I'd love to talk to you afterwards about why this graph is that way. And then how does it compare, like what's the breakdown internationally? Remember we talked about the patents, it's US and China and Japan and Korea and everybody else. So down below you say US, China, WO just means the International Patent, basically World International Patent Organization. It's just a filing scheme. Europe, Korea, Japan, India, Canada, Australia, and Israel. Those are the main basic, strong IP-loving countries with important markets for obtaining patent portfolios. And the biggest one of all is Magic Leap. I mean, they are crushing it. They are just filing tons of patents, as we know, in all different countries. They're spending a lot of money on it, and apparently it's showing. Followed by Microsoft and Facebook, but the blue is out. Everybody else, there's just literally hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of companies working to get patent protection. And a notable Microsoft patent, again, for a wearable, see-through near eye display. This patent was filed back in 2012, issued a couple of years later, still active, okay. A Magic Leap patent, gets into the optics. We're going to talk about optics very shortly, about how the waveguides basically direct the light into the eye. So waveguide eye on the right, eyeball on the left, and all those lines are the rays. And then hot topic number 4, again, optical waveguides. Personally, this is something I love. I love optics. I wear glasses. Blah. Okay, sorry. But let's get into the patents. Loomis is a particularly interesting company. They're making, again, light guide optical element with multiple internal axis, internal aperture expansion, Israel-based company. And they make I've seen some really interesting products coming out of Loomis. I thought, let's take a look at their patents. So you can see up on the right, there's the light source, which is your image, and how it does this internal reflection through this thing with, basically the plastic or the glass waveguide. And down at the bottom on the left, you see an eyeball, right? It's always the eyeball. First time you look at patents with eyeballs on, it's kind of creepy, but there it is. That's how patents are done. Another interesting patent I found was the Cura patent. Well, some of you have heard about Cura. Some of their troubles lately, but interesting technology. This is actually Kelly Peng's patent on the right. Basically, they're interesting. They're pinhole mirror array waveguides for the purposes of creating, but they're hoping, basically these AR glasses, which very wide field of view. I mean, most field of views are looking at maybe 20, 30%, 50%, 55, 60 at most, and they're, I think, claiming 135 degree field of view, and this is how they do it. So this is the patent on the right and a schematic of how their technology works on the left. And recent patent, this 11,221, this was recently allowed. So they get 20 years from this, from when it was filed, potentially. Finally, hot topic number 5, light field and holographic displays. I think this is probably the coolest technology. It probably requires some of the most detailed, excruciating experimental work to make light field and holographic displays. I understand there are PhD physicists from all over the world and optics, this is the hard stuff. This is technically hard. The most challenging stuff is to make the great looking images. And what's really important here is, again, I think that, we all have had heads-up display technology in our cars for 10, 15 years now. That exists. It's easy to project images when the image is far away. But when things are up close, we end up with a real problem. And a lot of folks who are into optics, they understand what the problem is, and that is the divergence accommodation conflict. That's when, basically, on the left is the problem, is when you try to focus on something that's close to you, but the optics don't allow it to accommodate. The divergence is basically your crossing of your eyes, and the accommodation is how your eyeballs, your lenses, change the focus. So the changing of the focus is how your body, your eye, accommodates to the changing of the distance as well as the motion of the eyes, which is the divergence. And so how do you solve that problem? The problem here is when you're using AR glasses within and looking at objects that are close, like within an arm's length or two away from you, this is a real problem, and people will feel sick and nauseous and potentially leading to eye damage. So I think this is really fundamentally important, because if I'm going to wear a pair of glasses all day long, AR glasses, and to be able to look at information, look at things in front of me, talk to people, maybe I want my child right there or something like that, I can't be getting sick in 20 minutes. So interesting patent by Creedle, a company based in Switzerland. And this is something that they work on. It's a light field mixed reality system with what they call correct monocular depth cues to a viewer. And I have a little bit of the claim on the right, just to show what's going on. Okay, so number 10, if you're looking at the image, so it's a light field mixed reality system. Okay, it starts with the pin light array number 10. Okay, generating an incident light field, that's 100. Illuminating an optical light modulator 20. So the modulator basically is moving. You have a moving image coming out of 10, and between that and all the optics. And then again, at the bottom, you see the eyeball, right? You see the image forming, the virtual image forming on the retina in the eyeball, and it basically accommodates what's close and what's far. And so stuff like this, technology like this, I think is going to be really important. And this is pretty much the end of my talk. And I just wanted to say that, you know, I also indicated in my abstract, where do I think the patent fights are going to be? Where is going to be the big litigation? Well, clearly, folks, the technologies that are going to be, you know, mass-produced and commercialized, those are the most successful ones, okay? The people who own patents that somehow cover a piece of those most successful technologies, those are the people who basically have the right to enforce the others to what? To take a license or pay or stop, okay, using their patents forcefully. So anything that enables a consumer product, so if there's going to be like critical, lightweight, small light field optics, right, and that's going to end up permeating the entire industry. The people who own those fundamental patents, you know, they potentially have the ability to start those patent wars. Or software, critical software, you know, software for doing the you know, the neural radiance field conversion, things of that nature. Anything that's really important and part of the commercially most successful technologies will be the ones that you'll be seeing the patent fights. I do expect a lot of potential, what we call the patent trolls, people who just buy patents for the purposes of asserting them against the big companies. That happens all the time. It's been happening. It will continue to happen. So with that, I'd like to basically stop the official part of my program and then ask, you know, basically leave it open for questions. We have a microphone on the right, a microphone on the left, or your right, my left. And please come on up. I'm here for a few more minutes, and I'd be happy to, you know, talk at length afterwards outside. So thank you very much. Hi.
I'm Elina Olila from Iconic Engine. I actually used to work at Nokia in the early days and was filing a lot of patents. And I would be curious to hear, you didn't really talk about the sort of service system type of patents. And personally, that's a type of patents I've been filing in the past. So what sort of patents in the area of XR that there are that you see in the area of services, which describes more of a system on top of hardware?
Well, I'm sorry, I don't quite I didn't understand the question.
Yeah, so...
Service? Please?
Yeah, more like services type of patents, because the topics that you were talking about, they were more hardware and equipment, more software type of, because I know those are more difficult. So if you have any thoughts to share around those, and what are you saying and what are the difficulties?
Right.
That's what I'm interested in.
Yeah, if I understand, it's like you're more interested in like the application software type of...
Yeah.
There are lots of that. My focus was on the tech, obviously the tech today, because the tech is what we typically see, you know, mostly will be the subject of something that you could see readily inside the devices, which means that it's readily discernible for patent infringement, okay? So, software, I mean, clearly all of the volumetric rendering, the imaging, and the image analysis is very much part of that, very critical, and there's been a lot of patents, and that was definitely part of my talk. But there's like a lot of application stuff, okay? A lot of like, you know, games and software and applications. Now, typically, those are not the, you know, 100, 200, well, some of them are very large in basically market value, but my talk today was really focused on the technology for that reason. So, but if we could talk more afterwards. Any other questions right now? Okay, well, with that, thank you very much. I see Brianna's here with the hook. Okay, Brianna. Okay, thank you, everybody.